Hey there everyone, my name's Andrew and this is Canadian Starships. Well, here it is. This is the final update on the Nova Class project, and we have a crazy amount of work to do. There is not much time left until the deadline for this project, so I'm going to keep this introduction very short. There's a pile of work that I need to get done before I go to bed tonight. I need to get the navigation lights sorted, so I need to get holes drilled where they need to go. I need to get LEDs wired. I need to get the correct resistors for them chosen. I also need to recast the deflector dish tonight because the ones that I have too many bubbles in them and are not going to work. So I need to get right into that because time is of the essence. Let's get started. First bit of progress tonight, we've got the deflector dish recast, and I did my very best to make sure that as many of the bubbles were out of that thing as I could. I don't care about bubbles on the surface there because that's where it attaches to the ship. I tried to make sure that all the bubbles on the surface of the mold on the inside were out. The next thing that I have completed is the LED strips are epoxied in place. I gave them a really good test and nothing failed, and so they are epoxied in place. And now I'm going to move on to, I believe, the deflector dish lighting. So let's try to see if I can get that going. Continuing progress, I've been working on the deflector dish and I've drilled a hole through the deflector dish. Of course, that's not going to focus for me. Drilled a hole through the deflector dish. You can see it there. Yep. And I've light blocked the inside with black paint. And then I've created this blue LED. So I've taken a 5mm blue LED and I sanded down the top of it so that it's nice and flat. And I've sanded it down as close as I dare go to the LED chip inside. And so this is going, and it's also on a resistor, so it will work with the 9-volt system. And it's going to fit nicely into the hole that's been drilled there. And it will come out the other side. And it will go right up against this new deflector dish that's just been freshly cast tonight. And it will glow blue out the sides of the dish. The front will be a bronze or copper color. Copper, I think, and then the sides will be clear and they will glow the blue, and that'll give the blue splash on the housing for the deflector dish, kind of as I showed you in the previous video in the reference material. So it'll be right up against the back here when it's installed, and it'll make the whole clear piece glow blue, and that'll give the perfect amount, hopefully, of blue splash on the housing. So I've tested this out. It works. I'm going to light block the back of the LED with some black tulip and let that fully set because I don't want to short anything out with wet tulip paint, and that'll be nicely light blocked. It's light blocked around the edges with shrink tube, which is also helping it to fit snugly into the aperture that I created for it. So this wasn't the way I was planning on doing the deflector dish originally, but I didn't understand how the deflector dish worked on the Nova class. But my understanding is that if I do the Voyager, it should work roughly the same way. So this is good R&D for that. So I'm going to put some black tulip on it, let it sit and fully cure overnight. And that's all I can do at this point today before I go to bed. I'm working on installing the SMDs at the moment, so let me get up and close to the aperture that I have just created here. And the SMD is just, let me back it off a little bit. Just inside there. inside the little aperture that is just behind those windows. Oh. That's about as good as I think I'm going to get it for now. So we are looking at this little aperture right there. There is a micro SMD in there, and I will get the actual size and number for you. And right now I'm running, I can't remember which resistor it is, but I've got this up to a fairly significant resistor because I don't want these to be too bright, but I'm thinking that's probably not going to be quite bright enough. Now, this is under full light conditions. I want it to be really noticeable, but I don't want it to be blaring. Let me turn it on, and I'm going to get rid of the light above. I really don't like showing this too much because you're never going to actually show it under these kind of lighting conditions. It's always going to be shown in better conditions, but it's coming across on camera probably just a tad bit brighter than it is in person. So I think I'm going to just bring down the resistance on that a touch. But I'm really liking how this SMD, this micro SMD, is working as a navigation light. So this is definitely going to be the way to go on all my projects where I need the tiny lighting. I wish I had done this on the Enterprise E, because on the Enterprise E, let me just if you can see here, bring it into focus, there are fiber optic cables coming out where the nav lights are, and this one broke off, so I'm gonna have to just make sure that I clean it up after I get the painting done. But I wish I would have done this on the nacelles. Wish I would have done it. Here we are with the next resistor. This one is a 22 times 1000. So whatever that works out to be, I'm not the resistor expert. But it's looking really good in person under normal lighting conditions. This is what it looks like on camera under normal lighting conditions. I'm going to turn the overhead light off, give you a look here. It's not too bright. It's definitely brighter in person than it is on cam, just the way that my camera is picking it up here. But I'm really happy with this. I think this is the one I'm going to go for, the white lights. It's not too bright. It's not too obnoxious, but it definitely stands out. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. And now I just need to get it wired up to the resistor, and I need to get it installed properly, which is going to be a little bit of epoxy, I think, in there, some clear epoxy. What I forgot to mention is that these are 0402 SMDs. They are super tiny, and they come in these packs of 5, one of which is in the model at the moment. And you can see just how tiny those things are. Those yellow lines are just the lines on my cutting mat that are super fine. These are super fine wires that they're attached to. Just for a little bit of reference, here's the LED tape that's being used on the inside, and you can see a bit of a size reference there. So these things are tiny, and they are doing such a good job with these indicator lights. I'm really happy. I am back to the resource material on the Trek Yards page showing where the next navigation light I need to put in is. It's the white one at the very back, just above the shuttle bay. So I have taken measurements and I've marked it out with a fine point Sharpie. I'm going to drill the aperture out with my trusty pin vise. Then I'm going to wire up a new 0402 SMD white, which will, with a 22 by 1K resistor, I will insert it into the aperture and fill it with epoxy, which the one here that I showed you earlier is just curing with the epoxy. So I better get at it because there's only 15 days, 33 minutes, and 20 seconds left in the competition. So I've got my iPad here just keeping me on track, so I better get back at working.
All the LEDs are installed. All the wiring has been reduced down to single leads on the top and the bottom. These are the single leads on the top, the positive and the negative. These are the single leads on the bottom, positive and negative. These ones have already been fed through the hole on the bottom. You can see them coming out there. I've decided, instead of joining up the top and the bottom leads in the model itself, I'm going to run both down through the mounting point into the post of the stand, and I will join them once they are out of the ship. That'll make it a little easier to work on. That way I'm not trying to get extra wiring inside the ship, and I'm not also trying to work with it on the stand because I don't want to be doing that. So I've tested the top and the bottom separately with the single feeds. They all work. There wouldn't really be much to show you if I showed you that at this point. And it is fully ready for the upper hull section and the lower hull section to be joined together. So that is my next task. So it's happened. The two parts are together. I put this together last night, and it is been sitting for almost 24 hours. So I'm going to get these clamps off shortly. But first, I need to look at decals. So I've run into a bit of an issue with the decals. The issue being that not all of the decals listed on the placement sheet are actually present on the decal transfer sheet. So I'm missing some very important decals, namely the transporter emitters for the entire ship. I'm also missing the main side Starfleet pennant down here. I'm also missing all of the sensor palette decals. Now, those are not too much of an issue because I can paint the sensor palettes. That's not a problem. But what a problem is the transporter emitters and the pennant. Also, the decal for the front here of the deflector dish on the saucer section is missing. Again, that's not a big deal. That can be painted, no problem. But this has just been another problem I've run into with this kit. I've emailed Federation Models and I haven't heard anything back, but I also don't have a lot of time. So I need to create these myself. Also, I've settled on the name. I'm going to go with the USS Nova, and that means that I need to adjust these. So I'm going to go into the vector editing software and just show you what I'm doing on that. So here we have the decals printed and ready to go. I've printed 2 sets on one sheet only because I didn't want to waste the sheet of decal paper. So this section here is what would normally come with the kit. And these ones over here are the ones that we're missing. Well, not all the ones that we're missing because there's also the sensor palettes that we're missing, but I can easily paint the detail on the sensor palette, so I'm not going to worry about those decals. But I mean, those side pennants, those go on the side of the engineering hall, and the transporter emitters are pretty important. Now I've got 2 sets of the transporter emitters here. I've got one at the proper size, I think, and then I just did a set that were slightly smaller, just so I had a little bit of option once I go to put these on the kit. Now, I will show you this next to the decals that came in the kit. And I'm just keeping them off the decal paper because I've already sprayed the lacquer on. So this is not a photocopy. This is not a scan print. I have recreated all of the art in a program called Inkscape. So here's a look at the original decals, and here's a look at my decals, plus the ones that were missing. So these have been sprayed with the top coat, so they are still drying. So while they're drying, I'm going to show you the assembled upper and lower hull sections. While the sealant spray on the decals is setting, I thought I'd give you a look at the two main hull sections assembled on here. Now, I want to show you specifically this seam here. This is a honkin' seam, and it's just got to do with how the two parts go together. So I have a lot of putty work to do in my future here over the next few days. So my plan is to focus on putty work of the main seam, and while that is drying, curing, hardening, in between filling and sanding, I'm going to work on the warp engines, the nacelles, get everything done with them because they still need to be finished prime, get the color on the clear areas, and get the LED lighting inside. I can work on the LED lighting on the bottoms of the nacelles while the tops of the nacelles, and actually I've got one of those right here, while the tops of the nacelles are getting their paint. So that's where we're at, making progress, but still under a time crunch. So a bunch of progress to show you. Let me start by showing you how the seam work is coming along on the main section. You can see over by the thruster, there is still some refinement to do, but it's coming along quite nicely. And what you're seeing being really zoomed in is not what you will necessarily see to the naked eye, but we still want to get it as good as we can get. At the very front of the deflector, let me see if I can turn the ship this way a little bit. There we go. Oh, the wires are making her turn a little bit. Let's see if I can show you what's going on here. Yeah, you can sort of make out with the lighting that there is a bit of rough section on the leading edge. That is an area where more putty needs to be applied. So I need to add a bit of putty there. I need to do a little bit more sanding, maybe add a bit to some of the sections of the seam, but it is coming along very nicely. Then over in this section here, we have the front deflector, which is being painted. It's got some very fine details on there, which I tried masking with my microscope camera, and the paint was just flowing into the little lines that were there. So I'm just going to paint the whole thing and then scratch out the lines that we want to have light shining through. So it's on its second coat of paint, and we're going for roughly the same color as we did on the main deflector dish for the ship. And then we've got the warp nacelles. Now what I'm doing on the warp nacelles right now is I'm working on creating a piece that's going to cover the Bussard collector area. So I want to try to isolate that light because I'd really like to get a red SMD in there to help with the Bussard collector lighting. And I also want to make sure where I want to put the light. Let me grab a pointing implement. Actually, there's a paintbrush right here. So I'm going to try, if I turn it this way, I'm going to try to mount the LED right on the very top. So when it's sitting right side up, the light will reflect off of the white little isolator there, and it should give a nice glow without having any hot spots. I'm going to do the same with the blue. I might mount the blue right up at the front, down, so that it bounces off the white and eliminates any hot spots that just running the LED tape on the bottom of the nacelle would cause. So that's what I'm working on right now. Also, just a note, the Alclad blue and red did not properly adhere to the clear resin. So when I took the masking tape off, it pulled a bunch of the tape off. So what I've done is I've got those masked for all the priming and base color and all the detailed painting. And then at the end, I will remove the mask and I will mask everything else. And I will place down the color at the end, the blue of the Chilla Grill and the red of the Bizarre Collector just to clean that up, and that's the same on both of those. Thought I'd show you the setup on the warp nacelle before I seal it up. I've got my 3mm LED in there, and I've got a light block wall here and a light block panel that will go on top here, and the white surface will be really good at helping the light to really glow through those Bizarre Collectors well. Then I am going to take, where has it gone? I'm going to take a 5mm, because that's the only blue I have other than my SMDs, which I don't think are going to be bright enough. And this wiring here is going to be secured down to the top of the nacelle. And I'm going to throw this blue, this 5mm blue in back here, shining at the chiller grills, and all this is going to come to the back. There's going to be the navigation light here, and it's going to be connected to the feeds going down the pylon, which is currently in the bottom half of the nacelle, which is attached to the Starship. So this is why I'm having to kind of build this up the way I'm doing it. But yeah, I just wanted to show that to you before I get it all sealed up, which is just about to happen for this front section here. Before I close this thing up, I want to give you a good look at what is just cram-packed into this thing. 3 LEDs, all the wires, resistors, etc. And boy, oh boy, is this thing ever a lot packed into such a small area. But I think I've got it ready. So it is ready for the 2 main leads here to be attached to those 2 leads on the starboard side. So it's been marked with an S at the front so that I don't get them mixed up, because you want green on starboard and red on port. So this is the last you will see of this nacelle before it is attached to the model. So here's the results of last night's work. The entire ship, for all intents and purposes, is assembled. Now, there are a few greebly bits. There's the deflector dish on the front, the main deflector under the saucer, and there's also some go faster fins on the back of the nacelles that need to be installed, but those are going to be installed a little bit later. So the whole thing is assembled. Today, I'm going to be focusing on seam work. There are still some seams that need to be taken care of, namely that one right there on the leading edge of the front. And then there's some minor work around the other portions of that main seam. But I'm going to flip this thing over, and you'll see that there's a fairly significant amount of work that's going to need to be done seam-wise on the warp nacelles. And here's the last look at her before she gets base color. I think I'm done with sanding, or at least I'd better be, because I have very little time left. But yeah, there she is, and I'm just about to take her in to get some base color on. So forgive the audio, but I've just got my camera outside to show you, because I've got this out baking in the sun. It may not look a whole lot different, but base color coat is now on, and that is a dark gull gray that I went with on this. Now over on the other side of the barbecue, which I'm just using to hold this right now, I have an old stand piece that I've just got, I'm using it as a control for the different layers that are going on this. So this is the base coat, it's got the primer underneath, and I'm going to put the clear coat, the gloss clear coat on top of this first to make sure that there's absolutely no reaction between the clear coat that I'm choosing to use and the paint, as it's the first time I'm using the Vallejo air paint. So there she is. She's got her first coat of color, and she's just baking in the sun at the moment. So I'm about to do the darker gray details, and so I've had to mask off all of the areas very finely. I'm going to go in now and do the bulk masking, but I just had to take some really thin strips of tape and mask off all these detail areas. So I'm going to get the bulk masking done and get some dark gray paint on here.
All the detail painting is complete and all of the touch-up has been done. So now I need to get some gloss clear coat on that, which I'm going to do right now. Once the gloss clear coat is done, we will start to get some decals onto this project. So coming along. This has been about 2 days worth of work to get the painting done on this. Decals are on and the matte coat has been applied, and just like the painting stage, this took quite a long time to do. A lot of detail decals, a lot of teeny tiny details. The those phaser array decals were probably the most time consuming between the horseshoes and the other small ones that go all along those phaser emitters. And then of course the escape pods were fiddly as well. You'll notice that they've been sequentially numbered. So they start on the behind the bridge with 101, 102, 103, and 104. The odd numbers are on the port side, the even numbers are on the starboard side, and then that is carried over here as well. So you've got 105, 107, 109, etc., and the same on the other side. There's the lovely USS Nova. It is straight. My camera's just on a wee bit of an angle, so it might not look quite straight from this angle. These tiny, tiny triangles were quite a feat. Just so tiny, but just lots of teeny tiny decals going on this one. So it is already been matte coated. Now I need to add the parts that just a few greeblies. I also need to deal with the warp nacelles. I'm gonna have to take the tape off, and I'm probably gonna have to spray in the red and the blue alclad in there again, just to finish that up. Then all I have to do, once those extra parts are on and the nacelles have their final paint on, is to remove all the window masks, get it attached to the wiring of the base, and then this thing is done. Next time you see it, all that'll be done and it'll be sitting nicely on its base. Here she is completed. Let me turn the lights on. And this was completed and posted to the contest with 3 hours to spare. The contest deadline was 1 a.m. Friday morning, July 31st, Eastern Time. And I got this posted at 10 p.m. Thursday evening with 3 hours to spare. Not bad considering I was still doing decals the morning of the deadline. I've got to say, even with all the trouble I had on this project, I'm really quite happy with how it turned out. Let me get a little bit closer on these details for you as the table turns to show off the ship with its lighting. Now the lighting is done on a 9-volt circuit and is currently attached to a 9-volt battery, but it has been set up so that I can switch it over to a wall plug in the future if I decide that's needed. And I thought you might like to take a look at this from the bottom view. Here she is. Particularly like the way that the deflector dish
came out with that subtle glow coming from behind it.
So that's a wrap on the Nova Class Starship Project. It sure has been a journey. Now, if you haven't seen this journey from the beginning, go back to the first episode on the Nova Class Starship playlist and watch it through from the beginning. It's been really interesting. It's been quite a challenging build, but I'm really glad to see that it's done and that it's come out so well. Now, I have no idea how we'll do in the competition. There's a few really good pieces, so we'll have to see what the judges think, but should find that out in a couple days. Now that the Nova Class project is done, I'm going to be getting back to the Enterprise E project. So the next model building update you will see here will be for the Enterprise E. We're going to get back into scratch building the shuttle bay for that project. Also, coming up very shortly, I'm going to do an episode, well, not really an episode, but a video, where I'm showing you what I found in my parents' attic from when I was a kid, all the Star Trek stuff that I found up there. And I'm also going to be transforming the background behind me with some of the stuff that I found in my parents' attic. So that should be really interesting. Now, the Nova Class Starship project there, if you want to own that, if you offer the right price, it is for sale. So if you're interested in that, you can give me an offer on that. You can email me at andrew@canadianstarships.com and we can perhaps negotiate a price on that. So that is it. That's everything for this project update. I hope that you've enjoyed it. If you did, make sure that you hit that like button. If you're new to this channel or you haven't done so yet, why not hit that subscribe button today? You'll make me very happy if you do. But for now, this has been Andrew. This is Canadian Starships. Have a great day, everyone.